Welcome to the Daily Present with John Ball. Once again, today I'm talking about accents, different accents that can be used in public speaking. Are they good? I'm actually going to tell you why I think it's wonderful, but there are a few things that perhaps we need to watch out for. That's what I'm getting into today, talking about accents in public speaking. Join me after the titles. Okay, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. So today I am talking about accents and using accents in public speaking. Now, I'll give you a bit of background here because you might think, well, I have a very English accent. And I do. And I was born in England. I grew up in England. But originally, although I have what probably sounds like a very Southern England accent now, people in England would recognize that as being more London, Greater London area. Originally, I came from Manchester up in the north. That's where I was born. My family are all from Merseyside and Wirral area. So even now, even though I haven't had a strong accent since I was a small child, when I go and spend any time with anyone who's from the north of England, I tend to pick up their accent really quickly, especially if they are from Merseyside, Liverpool, Manchester. I fall straight into that accent very quickly. But for some reason, because of that, and maybe it is because of changing accents and developing as I was growing up, that I've ended up picking up accents wherever I go. I remember spending a whole summer in the US one time, and I came back and I couldn't hear this in my own voice, but people said they could hear an American accent in my voice. Now, this doesn't necessarily happen to everybody, but it can happen. And some people are definitely more able or more sensitive to accents, I should say, and take them on. And it can be a really good rapport skill so long as you are not trying to mimic somebody's accent. But look, in the world of public speaking, sometimes accents can be seen as a negative, and often it's not really necessarily valid reasons why that's the case. I think it's really just more a case of we tend to think people who have more of a standard accent, where perhaps they don't even seem to have a particular accent, sound better in some way. And yet, for me, I absolutely love hearing all different kinds of accents, local UK accents, specific accents for regions, and international accents as well. I think it adds a lot of color and beauty to public speaking and presentation, that nobody should be trying to lose their accent unless you have a very good reason for doing so. Like if for example, you're very hard to understand with your accent in any other language or any other area, then it might be a good idea to at least do some work on that. And I think that perhaps is the thing to watch out for with accents. If you do have a very strong accent, you're probably going to need to do a bit of work on enunciation, but that's not getting rid of your accent. And I ask you, please don't do that. Please add to the color and the beautiful rainbow of voices that we get to have. I think perhaps one of the reasons why, and as someone who listens to a lot of audiobooks, accents tend to be very standard in audiobooks. So even in the US, you will have very clearly speaking, very generic sort of accent, and in the UK as well. And that has tended to be the case on television in the UK, maybe in the US as well to some degree, perhaps less on local television and radio. However, the whole thing of now people are recognizing that we do have people who from all different regions and all different accents, and even international people, that it's important to bring these accents in and not try and hide them or not say that one accent is better than another. The only thing you need to be able to do is to be clearly understood. I absolutely love listening to audiobooks with specific accents. It stood out to me. In fact, I think it's one of those things that stood out to me because you don't always hear it quite so often. And I was listening to an audiobook by Donald Robertson, and Donald Robertson is a Stoic philosopher, and I was listening to his audiobook of which is kind of like it's called How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, and it's about the life of Marcus Aurelius, or the last days even of Marcus Aurelius, but certainly about a lot of his life as well leading up to that. And it's a fascinating book, but he read the book himself, and Donald has a pronounced Scottish accent, but it was just wonderful to listen to. And so be proud of your accent. And if you do need to work on your enunciation, work on that. The most important thing is that you can be understood, but it's part of your personality. It's part of who you are. So I know that my accent can kind of change and is variable. It's a bit of a shape-shifting kind of accent. And that sometimes can depend on who I've been talking to. Although I think I have yet to pick up a Spanish accent, having lived here even for over 8 years now. That doesn't seem to be the case, but maybe that's because I still spend most of my time speaking in English for creating content and working with clients. That aside, I think accents are wonderful things. Own yours, speak clearly with it, be proud of it, and add the color to the whole scene of public speaking, presentations, and content creation. Let your voice be heard. Let your true colors and your accent shine with pride, and let's make it more of an enriched world of public speaking and audiobooks and everything else because of that too. Now, I think really where you come from is a really powerful thing for all of us in terms of our stories as well, and not just in our accents. So have a think about what maybe is specific to where you were born, where you grew up, and maybe what's changed now. If you live in the same place, what have been the things that stay with you from that? What are the things that you know that uniquely people who are from there and have lived there all their lives know and have experience of that perhaps people who haven't done that don't? Or if you have moved around to different places, what experiences that has given to you? There's a lot of material to draw on from all of that as to creating stories and content and understanding those sorts of feelings of acceptance and even specific local areas that could be educational to people from outside there as well. The things we take for granted. There's this thing called it's like the curse of knowledge. We tend to think that when we know stuff, other people know it as well. And yet, when you actually create these stories, you find out, oh no, I had no idea about that. A good example of this would be a thread I saw on Twitter recently. Someone was sharing that they actually don't have an internal monologue, that they don't think to themselves in words in their head. Now, as someone who does that, and I'm sure probably most people do that, then you probably will find that it's very hard to understand or comprehend how somebody could not have that. And yet the conversation ended up being interesting. It's not that nothing's going on in their brain. They just think in a different way. They use different, the one guy who was talking about was describing it more as a sort of visual and image and conceptual sort of ideas. We couldn't really even express that. But when it comes to speaking and creating stuff, it just seems to flow and happen. A fascinating thing, but sometimes we take things for granted that not everybody has that experience of, because we tend to think that we are having a normal and common experience, and it may not be. Like one thing I ended up talking about, or having a realization was, is that I always wake up with songs playing in my head, not with the radio on. Just like when I wake up, there's always a song that comes into my mind, and that usually accompanies me for the morning. And it's always a different song as well. And so it's like my brain has its own Spotify playlist, if you like. And sometimes there's songs I like, sometimes there's songs that have come up from the recesses of my unconscious. And yet that can be really interesting material for you to talk about in terms of creating speeches, presentations, things that we just take for granted in our lives that can really add a lot of richness and texture, and other people don't have those experiences of. So don't take it for granted that people have the same experience of life that you do. And these things, look for those triggers and those ideas that, well, maybe that's not everyone's experience. Make a note of it, because this is good material for you creating content and stories in your own presentations and content. Okay, so we talked about a bit more than accents today, but what I will wrap up with by saying is that if you do have a good local accent, be proud of it, just speak clearly with it, and add your colors to the world of public speaking, because it's needed. Let's have lots of beautiful, wonderful accents speaking out loud, and not feel that it has to be just one kind of accent, that you have to do your best BBC voice every time that you're speaking or presenting. Okay, let's wrap things up for today. But we'll be back again tomorrow. Back again tomorrow with another Daily Present. Who knows what I'm talking about then? Haven't decided yet. But I'll look forward to seeing you then. Look out for the new episode of Points of Change. It came out yesterday with Sunil Godse talking about gut and intuition and how to activate yours and how to make it always work for you. Looking at some of the science of it. It's not a woo-woo conversation at all. Not my kind of thing. But it was a fascinating conversation about intuition, and the research on it was wonderful to hear as well, that people have scientifically investigated this stuff. So I will look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. If you are needing to get back to work, it's time to do just that. So get back to work.